What's up, everybody? This is the 2024 Hyundai Kona. And so for the Kona, it's all new for the 2024 model year, and it's grown a good bit. It's on a 2.3 inch longer wheelbase. It's 5.7 inches longer overall. It's an inch wider. And so a lot of that was done so that you finally have a good sized backseat, one of the best in the segment now, as well as having much more cargo space. And we'll get into all that in a minute here. But as far as the styling goes here on the Kona, well, it continues with Hyundai's new design language here. And this one has this continuous LED strip across the front here for this N-line version, which is one of the upper trims, and it just looks so sharp. And they continued with the split headlamp thing like we were used to in the previous generation, with the actual headlights being lower there in the front bumper. And the N-line, of course, has the more aggressive bumper here, and also you have active grille shutters there, which is a cool touch here up front. And they also improved the ground clearance here on the Konas as well. So for the front-wheel drive versions, you'll have between 6.7 and 6.9 inches of ground clearance. On these all-wheel drive versions, it's between 8.1 and 8.3 inches of ground clearance depending on the trim. And so I mean, that puts it right behind the Subaru Crosstrek as the second best here in the segment as far as ground clearance goes, which will be awesome, especially for those who live off the beaten path. And so going down to the sides here, though, they kept the very chiseled look and the very chunky body cladding we're used to from the last generation. And these N-line wheels also look really cool as well, but there's of course a wide variety of wheels you can get depending on the trim once again. And then going out towards the back there, you will see that you have that massive rear wing here, only on the N-line version, of course, but it definitely over-promises for a vehicle with less than 200 horsepower, but it's fun and it's exciting. It might not be everyone's cup of tea back there, but I think it's, fun that they went that bold with it. I also love, the rear bumper there, and again, that continuous LED strip just looks so futuristic and so sleek, and just looks awesome out back there as well. And so overall, I think that this Kona is really going to stand out, and they're also offering a lot of really fun colors, which will also help it to stand out a little bit more. But I think they did a great job with just making it bold styling. With a lot of the others in this segment are very, rugged or very conservative looking. This really stands out, and I think they did a great job on the styling. The interior of the 2024 Kona is a huge improvement over the old version. The main thing, cliff notes here, is the back seat is finally usable for adults, and the cargo space is much better as well. So those are the two biggest improvements, arguably, for the Kona in general. But anyway, starting off up front here, it's also a really impressive vehicle. Now, this is the N-line version I'm still in here for the interior. This is not the top trim. The Limited is the top trim and gives you a few more features here. But this N-line still is really nicely loaded up with some good stuff. So anyway, first thing, sitting down in these seats, you have these really soft, comfortable seats here. And this one has the Alcantara upholstery here because it's the N-line version. You'll have leatherette on the Limited, and then you'll go down to cloth on the lower trims there. Now, even in the N-line, though, you only have heated seats. Whenever you go up to the Limited, you do get ventilated seats as well, which is huge and is one of only a few vehicles in this segment that offer cooled seats. So if you live in a place where it gets hot a lot of the time and that's something you appreciate, Kona is going to be one of your only choices here, and great that they're continuing to offer that here for this new generation, because it really does put it above many of the competitors. And then moving on to the steering wheel here, it's also this brand new Hyundai design that they have, and it's really impressive. I think they got these sliders from the Genesis models because it's really this heavy metal, just feels great. Has a great 9-3 grip, nice little 10 and 2 notches, and it's a nice thinner wheel too. It's not overly thick, and just a few buttons here like you're familiar with from other Hyundai products. Moving on to the gauge cluster and the screen, one of the other huge things here for the new Kona is that this 12.3 inch touchscreen in the middle is standard across the board. And so it's really great they give you that as standard, and it's also the largest screen, I believe, in this segment in general, and then you get it as standard. It's not even an extra cost option. Is awesome. Now these the gauge cluster is another 12.3 inch display. That is an extra cost thing. On these higher trims it comes standard, but on the lower trims you're going to be getting a 4.2 inch display in the middle, I believe. I haven't seen that to see what that looks like, but I have to say that these new graphics are really nice here. Now there's still not much customization. I wish Hyundai would offer a little more customization as far as what's displayed in there. It basically just shows you your basic car info, and that's about it. There isn't any way to see like the radio station in there or anything like that, but I love the new graphics there for the needles there for the gauges and stuff. It's a really cool look. There's a couple different looks, and you can also change it with the drive modes and have a sportier look there in the sport mode, which is fun too. But wish there was a little more customization, but still really nice gauges. And but coming over to this touchscreen here on the lower trims, it's not going to have navigation built in, but those ones will have wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto as standard, which is great. Now when you go up to this higher trim versions, you're going to have navigation, which is nice, but you currently only have wired in Apple CarPlay and wired in Android Auto. They did say this new system is eligible to do over-the-air updates, and so it's going to get an update, they're saying, at some point here, hopefully in the next few months. So they didn't give a timeline exactly, but it will have wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto after that update has been completed here at some point, I'm guessing in this model year at some time. So great that it will have that, and that really puts this screen right at the top, because a lot of the other competitors do offer the wireless CarPlay, and that was the one deficiency here of this large screen in the past, but now with this new software and the over-the-air capability there, it's able to have that smartphone integration wirelessly, which is awesome. As far as the menu systems for this new display, it's not bad. I'm not in love with the way it tunes radio stations. It's where you can pick the station, but then whenever you're on the radio page, it just shows you that, and that's it. I kind of like their old setup where you had, the display of your radio stations to switch through easily, as well as having, a nice big display. But aside from that, it's great. You still have a tune knob, by the way, so that will make tuning easier compared to many of the other competitors that don't have tuning knobs. So they do have that going for them there. And otherwise, it's, pretty simple and straightforward, with the maps for the navigation and everything else. It's pretty simple. But I do love how they still continue to offer great customization. You have this favorites button here on this hard row of buttons, and you can program that to do a bunch of different things. And even you can swap the volume and tuning knobs to be opposite. So if you have your passenger always changing the volume, you can also, swap it over so they don't have quite as far of a reach. Thoughtful little things like that are really creative that no one else really offers. I love that Hyundai does those things and gives you, they're kind of just showing that they're giving 110%, which is great. Beneath that screen there, like I said, you have those buttons, and then you have the really simple climate controls, nice and straightforward there. And then you also have, coming down here, a few more buttons here by your drive mode selector, and also a wireless charging pad here on these upper trims, as well as USB-C jacks exclusively in this vehicle. They got rid of all the USB-A, so all USB-C now for faster charging there. And then they really opened up this whole center console. Now, I believe this is only on these upper trims where you have this new column-mounted shifter. I believe lower trims still are going to have a traditional shifter in the middle, and you lose some of this functionality. But here are these upper trims here. It's great. You have these hideaway cup holders if you want to really open up that space, and just a huge amount of space, since you don't have that shifter there. It's a huge improvement. You also have the center armrest, which does have a little removable tray up top, but I mean, just a really large amount of space there, and really customizable, and I just love that. For a vehicle that's small like this, it's great to have that extra space for sure. And you also have a little bonus space here on the passenger side. It's a really large shelf that you have over there, and that's great. You also have pockets in the doors with a bottle holder, and so overall just a really good amount of storage space here. Also, another new addition is you have a Bose 8-speaker stereo here on the N line and the limited trims, and we haven't tested it out too much here today. Something I'll have to test out some more later on, but it's just nice that you have a Bose stereo upgrade here in the Kona now. Moving on to the back seat here though in the Kona, like I said, that is the biggest improvement. You have 3 extra inches of rear legroom, and so I'm 5'9", me sitting behind myself. I easily have several inches of legroom to spare, and again, we're talking about a subcompact SUV. This is actually now the best rear legroom in a subcompact crossover, according to the numbers. Hyundai can claim they have the largest now, and it is really impressive. Not only did they get that because of the longer wheelbase and the longer size overall, but also even these seats, these front seats, they made them 30% thinner to, again, carve out just a little bit more space. They really, again, going outside of the box with trying to come up with ideas to maximize that rear seat space, and it really works and pays off really well. It's a very spacious back seat. Another great addition is you now have rear air vents here on the upper trims as well, and that's something that you didn't have previously in Konas, and a lot of the others don't offer as well. They compete with this. You have a fold-down center armrest with cup holders, pockets in those doors, and that seat also does recline a little bit as well, and just a really nice back seat. And if you go for the electric Kona, you also have a flat floor back there as well, so you won't have the little hump that you have here on the gas-powered versions, and that'll give you even more space theoretically as well. So a really well done back seat. Also, cargo space is a huge improvement. So there's 6 extra cubic feet of space compared to the last generation. It's 25.5 cubic feet now. And while that isn't best in class, I believe the Corolla Cross and one or two others might have a little bit more space back there. It is towards the top of the pack, and it beats stuff like a Subaru Crosstrek and many others. And so it's a really large amount of space back there, and you'll see a little pocket there off to the side. And another cool little thing is the cargo cover. They found a creative solution so that actually snaps to the back of the rear seat back there, so that you can get it out of the way without it taking up extra space. If you have tall items that you weren't planning on bringing with you, that gets out of the way, and you don't have to find some other place to put it here inside the vehicle. So that's a cool little touch. Also, on all-wheel drive models, you get a spare tire there under the floor, which is great that you have that. I'm not sure why it's not on the front-wheel drive versions. I'm guessing it has to do with the torsion beam having a little bit less space under the floor there potentially. But really great that you have the extra space back there. And so again, makes this vehicle much more usable, much more more practical. But let's start up and go for a drive. The Kona here has this very interesting new key they have. It doesn't even have like a Hyundai logo on it. It's just a few buttons there on the back. Could be for any brand really, which is kind of an interesting choice, but it's a little bit on the large side as well. Don't love that, but it is cool and unique, so I'll give it that. But of course it is keyless access, keyless entry, and push button start as standard, by the way. Many others still have a twist key or don't have the proximity thing here as standard. This does have all that as standard, which is great. So you leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button, and it starts right up. All right, so setting off here in the 2024 Kona. So the first things you notice about this, well, I think the first thing I noticed, you have great visibility here in the Kona. And I think it might just be my memory, but I feel like you have a lower dashboard here than the previous generation. So it just feels like you have a little bit of better visibility up front here. View out of the sides is great. View out of the back, I think, also is a bigger rear window than the last version, which was a little bit of a smaller view. You also have the extra safety equipment here. You can now get, you can get a 360 camera. It has all the other safety tech too to help you out. It's a very small vehicle, easy to park, but you can also do the smart park now with your key. You have blind spot monitoring is standard, all these things to help you out. If this vehicle still, is a little tricky to drive for you for whatever reason, you have lots of stuff to help you out. Other things though that I'm noticing right off the bat here in the Kona is, first off, the thing that struck me the most was light steering. Especially at low speeds, the steering is insanely light and feels kind of disconnected, to be totally honest. It doesn't even feel like it's connected to anything. Now, up at higher speeds here, doing about 35 miles per hour now, and it does weight up a little bit better and gets a little more communicative. So I'd say that it feels good when you're up and driving, and I guess they really wanted to lighten it up for low speed maneuvers, but it just seems like overly light at low speeds. But I do appreciate the fact that it is, nice light steering, and it's still, even up at higher speeds here though, it is still a little vague, especially when you're right on center there. It just seems like it's, there's not really doing a whole lot. But I'm glad they didn't go overboard like Mazda has really heavy steering in the CX-30. And that's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. It's a little bit sportier, and if you're an enthusiast, that's great. But if you're not, I think something like this feels a little more average driver friendly. But another thing, noticing right off the bat, this transmission does not like to downshift, and it is very resistant to downshift. It's really trying to hypermile, it seems, with this 1.6 paired up with this 8-speed auto. It's just you're waiting around a little bit more than you should, and it just doesn't feel overly responsive. All right, but we're gonna go ahead and put it up into the sport mode here. Let's turn down onto this back road and see how it does with a 1.6 turbo. And here we go. There it is. Some healthy delay there. But then it gets up and moves fairly well. So we have the 1.6 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine here in the N-Line version and the Limited. It does 190 horsepower, 195 pound-feet of torque. And 0 to 60, I've actually been driving with Kirk today from Kirk Rifles, his YouTube channel. And so he quoted, we were getting about a 8.7 seconds 0 to 60 whenever you brake torqued it. So, that's what you can expect here. It's going to be, obviously less with the base engine, which on the SE and the SEL, you're going to go down to a 2-liter engine. It's an actually aspirated one with the Atkinson cycle. And that one does like 147 horsepower and 132 pound-feet of torque. So really not much to work with there. You have a lot more torque here with this engine, but those are also going to be a little bit lighter, and it'll just be interesting to see. We unfortunately don't have any to try out here, so can't tell you, how that's going to compare, but on paper, it's down on power by a lot. We will see, in the real world, if we ever get a chance to drive that base one, what that is going to actually feel like. But, so far, I'm just starting off here, but so far, it seems to be a decent amount of power. The turbo motor does give you at least a little bit of extra punch down low, so you don't have to wring the motor out quite as much. And it's paired up to an 8-speed automatic now for the first time here in these turbocharged ones. Previously, the turbo ones always had a 7-speed dual clutch. Now we have an 8-speed torque converter automatic, which should be so much nicer for stop-and-go traffic whenever you're inching up and all that. It's going to be a lot smoother. It doesn't have any of the roughness of that old dual clutch. Should be a huge improvement there as far as that goes. Now on that base motor, you're going to go down to the intelligent variable transmission, they call it. It's a CVT that's paired up with that base motor. So, yeah, I'm sure, for the buyer of this vehicle, that base motor will probably be fine, but, this motor feels okay. Now, with the N-Line styling we have on this vehicle, I think it kind of over-promises for the kind of performance you actually get out of it, but, it looks really cool, and, I think, again, having the turbo motor is great, especially if you live in a place with higher elevations, where the, competitors like the Subaru Crosstrek and stuff are really going to struggle being only naturally aspirated. Having the turbo here is definitely going to feel really nice in those places especially. But whenever you're just driving driving around at lower speeds, though, it's fine. It just really only gets in the way whenever you're demanding more power and more response out of it. Again, the average driver might not bother them that much, but just one thing I noticed. But otherwise, throttle response does feel fairly good. At least you have the 8-speed auto, so there isn't any kind of mushy feeling like you get with the CVT, for example. But other things, brakes have a nice, good bite right at the top of the pedal there, and handling also is pretty good so far. We do have a few corners coming up, but we're behind traffic, so not like I'll be able to push the Kona very much anyway. We're just talking about subcompact crossovers here, but it's going to be fine. These weigh between 3,000 and 3,500 pounds. This one being fully loaded with the all-wheel drive, pretty much. This doesn't have a few of the things that Limited has with this N-Line we're in, but we're right under 3,500 pounds here, which is pretty par for the course in this segment. And the one nice thing with the all-wheel drive versions is you get a multi-link independent rear suspension. If you go for the front-wheel drive one, it's going to be a torsion beam and a little less refined probably for the ride quality. But speaking of ride quality, that is, I think, one of the biggest improvements for this new Kona as far as the driving experience goes, is that the ride quality is much better. They increased the rigidity of the whole platform in general, and that combined with, they really focused on just improving the NVH. So we have, on these upper trims in particular, you have like a foam layer on the tires, so you have less tire noise. They increased a bunch of the sound deadening so that you have a quieter ride. Even they said they quieted down the exhaust and the engine, so those are quieter than before. And so honestly, the ride quality and just the sound in here, I'd say, is best in class, or right up there with like the CX-30 as being one of the quietest ones in this segment. Now the roads we're on now are pretty nice and smooth, not overly noisy or anything, but it really feels a class up, and even beyond a class up in some cases. I think there's some compact SUVs that have more road noise and are a rougher ride than this is. They just did a really good job of setting this up, even with this one, having these 19-inch wheels here with the N-Line version, a little bit of a sportier setup compared to the smaller wheels you get on the lower trim, but it doesn't matter because it's really refined and just really, really well done as far as that goes. And so I think that's going to be the one thing, especially if you're coming out of the old Kona and you're trading up into the new one here, you're going to be blown away by how much nicer this one rides. And so even though you might not have much more power than the old one, it's basically the same. You do have huge improvements there as far as the ride quality goes. And part of that is also thanks to the fact that the wheelbase is 2.3 inches longer than before. So you have a more spread out feel. The track is 1 inch wider for the whole width of the vehicle overall. And so that's going to give you a more stable, planted ride. All right, so now I'm in the Limited trim, which is how you get a lot of these nice extra features, like you have ventilated seats, you have ambient lighting, the heated steering wheel. You also get the 360 camera, as well as the blind view monitor here and the gauge cluster. And those are all nice things to have. So if those things appeal to you, then you're definitely going to want to go up to this Limited trim. And it still drives really nice. I will say this transmission still likes to try and hypermile. And there are some times where it really is like delayed and you're waiting a beat, but then there's other times where it's pretty responsive and pretty eager to downshift. So I'm going to need more time and have a week with one of these to really feel out this transmission a little bit more in the way they set it up here in this vehicle. One of the last things to mention here is the safety tech in the Kona, which is another area where they just knocked it out of the park as far as standard equipment and also available equipment. So as far as standard stuff, you get blind spot monitoring as standard. Some of the competitors, it's an option even on their top trims, and on a base Kona you get blind spot monitoring, and rear cross traffic alert is standard. And not only just rear cross traffic alert, but also with collision avoidance. So it'll do auto braking when it detects something there in the back as well. That's something that I don't think any of the others even offer, and to offer it here as standard is, again, just unheard of and really impressive. So I think as far as the tech features go, this has everyone else beat. The 360 camera is something that I think maybe the CX-30 has in its top turbo trims that are mid $30,000. But this has that. The blind view monitor is a Hyundai unique thing that no one else really does yet, but that's a nice thing to have too. And then all the other stuff, automatic emergency braking is standard, lane keeping assist, but the blind view monitor is only here on the Limited, and highway driving assist is also not standard. That is something that comes on some of the upper trims, but it's not reserved for just the Limited trim either. Unfortunately, the highway drive assist, this is the HDA1 system, by the way, not the newer HDA2. This system in the past in other vehicles from Hyundai hasn't held the lanes very well, and hasn't done great around corners, at least in Western Pennsylvania where I test them. So just keep that in mind. Not one of my favorite adaptive cruise systems out there, but nice to have. It's nice they offer that. And also, as far as crash safety goes, they also, with this new platform here, they've done several different reinforcements to help disperse energy better. And one huge thing is that now for the outboard rear seats has the pre-tensioners and the load limiters for the seat belts. And that is huge, because if you follow safety tech and and the IIHS, they have a new test that tests submarining and sees, a lot of vehicles are currently failing this new test because they don't have the pretensioners and the load limiters. Now, I don't believe they've done crash tests on this yet, but as far as just having those features, that's something that I'm not aware of any others in this segment that have those currently, and so this should be a top performer. Again, there's no guarantee yet until we actually see the data, but it seems like having those things is something that most of the other competitors do not have. So therefore, this should have one of the safest back seats, in addition to one of the roomiest back seats, and that is a really huge thing. It's really great to see that has been incorporated here from day one in this new generation Kona, and it should just be really great from a safety standpoint. Unfortunately, one thing that hasn't improved is fuel economy. So because this vehicle is bigger, it's heavier, and also it has a torque converter automatic instead of the more fuel efficient dual clutch it used to have, fuel economy has taken a little bit of a drop here for this new generation. So for this 1.6 liter turbo all-wheel drive version, you're going to be not even into the 30s really. And so for a front-wheel drive version, you're going to do 26 mpg in the city, 32 on the highway, and 28 combined. But you give up about 2 to 3 mpg going for this all-wheel drive version. So I mean, it's not going to be amazing. Now if you go for the 2-liter 4-cylinder, you get slightly better fuel economy thanks to the CVT, and the front-wheel drive also certainly helps if you go for that. But the last two things I mentioned here are pricing and how it compares to the competition. So as far as pricing goes, these start at about $25,500 to start, and then all-wheel drive is a $1,500 option, so it bumps you to about $27,000 for a base all-wheel drive Kona. And yes, that does seem steep, but keep in mind, for that $27,000 starting price with all-wheel drive, you're going to get this huge 12.3 inch touchscreen as standard. You're going to get some really nice NVH improvements. You're still going to have the great amount of space, which is best in class, and all these really nice things here for that money. And then this one has tested, like, it's a limited. This one's right around $34,500. The N line's about $33,500, all including destination, by the way. And so at those price points, I'd say it's competitive because again, you have best in class technology, and because you have some of the best space in the segment and some of the best safety, like I mentioned. So yes, it's more expensive than the last generation Kona, and yes, it's a little more expensive than some of the starting prices of some of the competitors, but again, you just get more for your money, in addition to the fact that the inflation thing is also driving up the prices of vehicles as well. And so I think in that context, the pricing is very reasonable and still very much in line with what you get with most of the other competitors. And there's lots and lots of competitors, so I'm not going to get into all of them. I think there's 20 competitors in this segment right now, they've said. So I mean, it'd be another hour-long video discussing how this compares to every one of those. But what I can say is that one of my favorite competitors is the Mazda CX-30. That has a much smaller backseat, much smaller trunk space. It feels a little tighter inside overall. But if you don't need the most amount of space possible, that does start at $24,000 with all-wheel drive, and actually basically the same amount of horsepower as this as well. One of the punchiest in its segment. But that still loses out on some features. Even a fully loaded CX-30 does not offer cooled seats, no matter how much you pay. But they do offer some other stuff. So really, one of the most enticing things is the fact that for about $35,000, you can get yourself a CX-30 Turbo. And the Turbo version is really fast, 250 horsepower, 320 pound-feet of torque, and it feels really luxurious as well for those turbo trims. And I think if you are someone who does want a little bit more power, if you are an enthusiast, I think that's a lot more enticing. And if you want something more luxurious, I mean, that soft touch materials everywhere. Even with this brand new Kona, I mean, the CX-30 still blows out of the water as far as the materials and that just being so much nicer. So that is, I think, really the most tempting one. And the fact that, even with a base CX-30, it's still very nice with everything that it has. And, it still actually undercuts this. Some of the other really popular competitors are like the Subaru Crosstrek and the Honda HR-V. Like the HR-V actually starts at almost the same exact price point, but that fully loaded version only tops at about $31,000, but you have smaller screens. Now it is a more plush interior, lots of soft touch materials and padding everywhere, so I think the HR-V interior is more premium, but you have less power in those upper trims. They just have the one engine with like 150 horsepower, so a lot slower than these 1.6 turbo ones, so that's going to be the compromise there. The Crosstrek, it gives you a little more ground clearance. That is about $700 less, so slight savings there, but that doesn't have, it has analog gauges. It's a lot less impressive on the inside, a lot less tech in all the ways, and just is a less impressive vehicle. And even for a fully loaded limited version of the Crosstrek, which still is down on power and technology compared to this, you're still coming in at the same price as this. So there's really no benefit to the Crosstrek aside from the extra ground clearance. That's really the only thing that you're getting there. And the only other competitor that kind of undercuts this just a little bit is the Kia Seltos, which is also from Hyundai's parent company here. And the Seltos is about $1,000 cheaper, comparably equipped across the board for the most part. But keep in mind that old Seltos, it's got a refresh here for 2024, but it's still the same old platform as the previous generation Kona, basically. And so that's going to mean that you're not going to have the same kind of rear seat space. Trunk space is going to be comparable still, because the Seltos has a much better trunk than the Kona. You're also going to have last generation stuff, so you're not going to have like the wireless CarPlay like you get here in this. Just a little bit of a more refined vehicle again for this new generation, like I said, with the extra sound deadening. The other improvements, that still is the dual clutch automatic versus this again having the torque converter automatic now for the extra smoothness. And so there's some compromises there. You're just basically getting a lot of the stuff from the old Kona with that Seltos still. And Seltos is still great, and if you're looking for that little bit of a savings, that could still tick the right boxes, and it does have great tech. That is one of the other very few options that has cooled seats in this segment. So there, that's another one that could make some sense. But anyway, the last thing to mention here is these are on sale now, so you can go to your dealer and check them out if you'd like. And overall though, I really like the new Kona. I think they came out swinging again with the refinement, with the safety, with the technology, the space inside. I think those are the four key pillars here, where this is a huge improvement over the last version and where it's the most competitive, is especially in those four metrics. So if you care about those things, I think that this is should be at the top of your shopping list, and should be a strong consideration. It's a really nice new vehicle here. I love the styling. It really stands out. I love they have fun colors, and I love they're offering an electric version too, which is something that most of the other competitors don't offer or even considering. So I think Hyundai's leagues ahead of everyone else as far as preparing for the future and offering that futuristic powertrain for people who are interested in that as well. I'd love to see a hybrid. That's the only last thing I'll mention, but seems like for now they're content to just do the gas and the electric, and we'll see what happens in the future. But anyway, that's all of my thoughts here on the 2024 Kona. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Huge thanks to Hyundai for providing me here with the opportunity to review the new Kona for you guys. And thank you all very much for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe to keep these videos coming, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.